Welcome to the Eat This Book podcast. I'm Michael Whitworth. Each day we take a small piece of scripture and we sit with it. Not a quick snack that disappears before lunch, not a chore you check off of a list, but rather a meal meant to be savored. So pull up a chair. Let's eat. Abraham fell on his face. This isn't the first time. Back in verse 3, when God announced the covenant, Abraham fell on his face in reverence. It's the posture of worship, of awe, of submission before the Almighty. But this time, something else happened. He laughed. Then Abram fell on his face and laughed. The father of faith, face down before God, laughing. What kind of laugh is this? The Hebrew word is sashak, to laugh, to mock, to play. It's the same root that will become Isaac's name. Whatever is happening in this moment will be memorialized in the child himself. But what exactly is Abraham feeling? Some say it's joy, the laughter of overwhelming delight. After 24 years of waiting, God finally says Sarah herself, will have a son. Abraham is so overcome with happiness that he can't contain it. Some say it's doubt, the cynical chuckle of a man who's heard this before. Another promise, more waiting. Sure, God, whatever you say. Some say it's disbelief, not moral failure, but human limitation. The promise is so absurd, so contrary to biology, that Abraham's body responds before his faith can catch up. Listen to what he says to himself. Shall a child be born to a man who is 100 years old? Shall Sarah, who is 90 years old, bear a child? He does the math. 100, 90, these aren't childbearing numbers. These are funeral planning numbers. The biological window hasn't just closed, it slammed shut decades ago. Abraham isn't being faithless, he's being realistic. And realism, when it comes to God's promises, is often the enemy of faith. But here's what gets me. Abraham doesn't just laugh, he offers God an alternative. Oh, that Ishmael might live before you. Do you hear what Abraham is doing? He's negotiating. He's trying to help God out. He's saying, look, I know you want to bless me with offspring. Ishmael is right here. He's 13 years old. He's healthy. He's mine. Why not just make him the child of promise? Why go through the impossible when the possible is standing right in front of us? Abraham is trying to make God's job easier. This is what we do when God's promises seem too big. We scale them down. We find workarounds. We point to what's already in hand and say, isn't this enough? Can't we just work with this? Ishmael was Abraham's attempt to help God along, the product of Sarai's scheme in Genesis 16, and now Abraham wants to retroactively make that mistake into the plan. Just blessed Ishmael. Let's not make this harder than it needs to be. And God says no. No, but Sarah, your wife, shall bear you a son. That word no is remarkable. God doesn't often say no this directly. He usually redirects, reframes, or stays silent. But here he stops Abraham mid-negotiation with a flat refusal. No, not Ishmael, Sarah. Not the shortcut, the promise. Not what you can manage, what only I can do. Sarah, your wife, shall bear you a son. God insists on the impossible. He's not interested in Abraham's realistic alternatives. He's not looking for Abraham to lower the bar. He's going to do what cannot be done so that everyone knows it was God who did it. 100-year-old man, a 90-year-old woman, a baby. If this works, there's only one explanation. God. And you shall call his name Isaac. It's Yitzhak. He laughs. The name is given before the child is conceived, and the name captures this very moment. Abraham face down, laughing at the absurdity of the promise. Every time Abraham calls his son's name, he'll remember this conversation. Every time he says Isaac, he'll be saying, I laughed, I doubted, I tried to negotiate, and God did it anyway. The laughter of disbelief will become the laughter of joy. I will establish my covenant with him as an everlasting covenant for his offspring after him. The covenant goes through Isaac, not Ishmael, Isaac. This isn't because Ishmael is unloved. God will bless Ishmael abundantly. We'll see that in a moment. But the specific covenant, the promise of offspring and land and blessing for all nations, runs through Isaac. God's plans are specific. He doesn't just bless generically, he chooses, he specifies, he insists. As for Ishmael, I have heard you. God hears Abraham's plea. He's not dismissing Ishmael. He's not punishing the boy for being born from impatience. Ishmael's name means God hears, and God is still hearing. Behold, I have blessed him, and will make him fruitful and multiply him greatly. He shall father 12 princes, and I will make him into a great nation. 12 princes, a great nation, a real blessing, real offspring, real significance. Ishmael is not the child of promise, but he's not nothing. He's outside the covenant line, but he's inside God's care. But I will establish my covenant with Isaac. That word but. God can hold two things at once. He can bless Ishmael and establish the covenant with Isaac. He can love the son of the slave woman and still insist that the son of the free woman carries the promise. The but doesn't erase what came before. It distinguishes. It clarifies. It insists on the plan. Whom Sarah shall bear to you at this time next year. This is where we get a deadline. God puts a date on the promise. Not someday, not eventually, this time next year. 12 months. You can mark your calendar. After 24 years of waiting, the promise suddenly has a due date. When he had finished talking with him, God went up from Abraham. The conversation ends. God ascends. Abraham is left with a promise, a timeline, and a name for a son who doesn't yet exist. And he has to decide what to do with his laughter. Here's what strikes me about this passage. God is not offended by Abraham's laughter. He doesn't rebuke him. He doesn't say, "How dare you doubt me?" He simply responds to the laugh with a promise. He answers the math with a miracle. He meets the realistic objection with an unrealistic insistence. God can handle your laughter. He can handle your doubt. He can handle your, "but this doesn't make sense." What he won't do is change his plan. Abraham tried to offer God a shortcut. Oh, that Ishmael might live before you. Let's just work with what we have. Let's be practical. And God said no, because God's glory is displayed in the impossible, not the manageable. Because the promise isn't supposed to make sense on paper. Because if a 90-year-old woman has a baby, nobody gets to say, "Well, that was bound to happen eventually." Sometimes God says no to our reasonable alternatives because he has unreasonable plans. We offer him Ishmael, the thing we manufactured, the solution we engineered, the backup plan that seems good enough, and God says no. I want to do something that only I can do. I want to give you Isaac. The child of promise is always the child you couldn't produce yourself. That's the pattern throughout Scripture. Barren women conceive. The youngest son gets chosen. The stone the builders rejected becomes the cornerstone. The crucified rabbi rises from the dead. God specializes in what can't happen. And when it happens, everyone knows who did it. So here's what Genesis chapter 17, verses 15 through 22 would have us savor today. If you've laughed at God's promises, if they seem too big, too late, too impossible for your situation, this passage says you're in good company. Abraham laughed too, and God didn't cancel the promise. He just kept talking. If you've been offering God alternatives, if you've been pointing to your Ishmael and saying, "Can't we just work with this?" This passage says, listen for the no. God might have something better than your backup plan. He might insist on the impossible. And if you're waiting for Isaac, if the promise has a due date but no baby yet, if the calendar says this time next year, but your arms are still empty, this passage says the God who names children before they're conceived is the God who keeps his word. He said Isaac. He meant Isaac. And Isaac came. Abraham fell on his face and laughed. God said no. Not Ishmael, Sarah. not the shortcut, the miracle. Not what you can do, what only I can do. His name will be Isaac. He laughs, because the last laugh belongs to God. Next time on Eat This Book, 3 visitors arrive, a promise is repeated, and Sarah laughs. Is it doubt? Weariness? Self-protection? And then comes the question that echoes through the whole Bible. Is anything too hard for the Lord? Join me in Genesis 18 as silent laughter meets an impossible promise. Thanks for eating with me. Until next time, may the Word dwell in you richly.